Okay, we're talking about The Giver today. You do need your book. We're talking about the lens of setting. Last time we looked at the three things that we used to come up with the big idea, which was the characters, the setting, and the plot. Today we're going to really zoom in on the setting. By the end of class, you will create theories of theme based on observations about setting. Now, why are we looking at the setting? Well, speculative fiction, which is an umbrella term that deals with settings and stories that are highly imaginative. A bunch of different genres fall under this big umbrella of speculative fiction, sci-fi, horror, fantasy. And they just ask the question, what if? Speculative fiction asks the question, what is? What if? To speculate means to imagine what if. And this is a genre, speculative fiction, and it asks, what if? So some examples of speculative fiction: The Hunger Games. What if the U.S. was no more due to war and famine? Avatar. Think about that movie with the blue alien bodies that the humans would enter into. What if aliens were real? World War Z. What if zombies took over the world? So think about some other titles that you may have read. Those aren't the only ones. The other titles you may have seen too. There's a very big genre right now, speculative fiction, that's being played out in movie theaters. Hollywood is obsessed with them at the moment. Speculative fiction, remember, what if? And the whole reason that we're saying that we have to pay attention to the setting to come up with the big idea, speculative fiction has highly imaginative settings, and you really have to use your imagination to think about them. So which requires more thought about the setting? Avatar, this alien world that has all these new types of plants and animals, or Thank You Ma'am. Thank You Ma'am takes place in, we said, a city, an urban setting, Harlem, perhaps. Also, what about The Hunger Games? The Hunger Games, think about that world, that setting that the author has created. And then think about Priscilla and the Wimps. Which one uses more imagination? Which one requires more thought when you're thinking about the setting? So here, let me give you a little bit of an example of what I'm talking about with the thought process when you're trying to figure out the setting in The Hunger Games. So when I first read The Hunger Games, I was confused about what districts were. Remember districts? There's 12 of them. So I figured out what districts were because District 12 is located in Appalachia. So they give me a clue. And I know where Appalachia is. Appalachia is, North Carolina, all the way up through West Virginia, those mountains, that mountainous region. Then I wondered, well, if this takes place in Appalachia, does the U.S. still exist? And then I noticed, well, they have a president. So do you see how there's a lot of a thought process about the setting that's going in there? I have to kind of make connections to what I already know and try to figure out this world that's completely new. But look at Priscilla and the Wimps, for example, the difference between that. When I first read Priscilla and the Wimps, I noticed that the setting is a school. Okay, well, I wasn't confused since I understand that setting well. I live, my whole life, I've worked in a school and gone to school, one of the two. So I pretty much understand what a school is. So that's what speculative fiction. That's why we have to really pay attention to the setting when we're dealing with speculative fiction. So at the beginning of a story, we're going to pay close attention to the setting, both physical and emotional, especially with speculative fiction, though. And we have to use observations to predict the plot and the big idea. And during this read aloud, I'm going to do a read aloud with you for the first chapter or the first part of chapter 1 in The Giver. So you got to think, what's similar to our world? What surprises you? That's a big one. What's surprising? And use it to shape your idea about what the big idea could be.